Hey everyone, this is Mike, and today I wanted to talk a little bit more about the diamond weapon. The run in the background was a request from the people that I was playing with last night. We were farming it a bit, and while most runs were pretty good, we had one run that was super scuffed, so they joked about putting it into a video, so here it is. When I uploaded my first kill POV, some people asked for my thoughts on the fight, and I'd only killed it once at that point, so even though my first impressions were pretty good, I want to get a few more kills under my belt before making an actual video about it. And I have to say that the diamond weapon has been a pretty pleasant surprise. I think a lot of people were pretty skeptical about this one because of what came before. Both Ruby and Emerald weapon are two boss fights, like quite literally you have two bosses in one fight, and then there is a cutscene in between with a checkpoint, and it's something that a lot of people weren't really a fan of, myself included. I don't mind it as much for something like E12 Savage because it's something that you do once a week. Fights are also much harder, so it serves as a bit of a mental reset, but these are extreme trials that you farm multiple times in a row, so the constant disconnect from the action feels a bit meh, because it's not just the cutscene. Most of the time people would also just run into the wall, reset the fight, then do another 20-second countdown or whatever it might be, which adding all of those things together wastes a lot of time. So going into the diamond weapon and now not having that cutscene felt pretty good. There's still an intermission between the first and the second phase, but it's an engaging intermission. So I like to compare it a little bit to Stormblood, where with Byakko we had to dodge the orbs while falling down, or with Suzaku we were playing Dance Dance Revolution during the intermission, and while simple, I take something like that over a cutscene any time of the day, as you're still doing something. And then also the fact that we now get 2 tokens per clear for this fight is just a cherry on top, because having the 2 token thing, a lot of us were expecting an extreme only phase because Ruby and Emerald weapon didn't have 2 tokens, and so if they're giving this one 2 tokens, it must be something that makes this fight a whole lot longer, right? But it wasn't the case, so again, a pleasant surprise. As for the fight itself, at first it felt pretty overwhelming with the mechanics, but now that I've farmed it a fair bit, it's actually a pretty chill fight. There are still a few mechanics here or there that could be a little bit sketchy, but for the most part I wouldn't say that it's harder than any of the other extreme trials. I'm also a very big fan of the 2-platform arena, as it adds an extra dimension into the fight, like an extra layer on top, I guess you could say. If you're playing something like a dancer or a dragoon, for example, you also need to make sure that your dance partner is the person that is staying on your side of the arena, or your dance partner might quite literally lose all of the buffs that you're giving to them. And the same thing for dragoon. I think you can see it in my samurai POV, but I get the dragoon tether at the start of the fight in the opener, but then you need to switch to the other platform as soon as it's available for the raid-wide AoE, so the tether just breaks, and you need to pay some more attention to those kind of things. But it's not just that. For healing and mitigation, it's also fairly different from your standard 8-man fight, as both of these things will most likely not reach the other side of the arena, so you need to handle the fight as if you're both quite literally on your own island, and each side is responsible for their own team, as it's difficult to reach the other side with both heals and mitigation. So it's something that we're not necessarily used to having for the most part. I think the other fight that I can think of that did something similar is E8 or Shiva from Eden's Verse, but that was only for the ad phase, which lasted like 2 minutes or something, and not for 2/3 of the fight. So you need to think a little bit different with how you want to handle some things, like for example having to get closer to the middle of the arena so that your heals can reach the other tank, or right before the second phase you technically only need to have one tank go to the other platform for the tank buster with the proximity markers, but if you find it annoying to reach that tank with your heals, then one healer could also jump over to just specifically go and heal that tank. And now thinking about it, you could probably also have both of the tanks stay on one platform and have both use their invulnerability, so that you don't necessarily have to switch platforms at all, and that is really easy to heal them back up again. So there are a lot of cool little things that you would be able to do on this fight that you normally wouldn't really have to think about on a normal fight. As for the flow, I think it was handled quite well. It's a nice final boss for the weapon series, as it combines mechanics from the previous bosses without it feeling like they were just copied mechanics, while also building upon everything in a good pace. In phase 1 you see almost all of the mechanics on their own, then phase 2 is completely different, but it adds in the articulated bits, or the gloves, the hands, whatever you want to call them, and then in phase 3 you have everything happening at the same time with a few extra mechanics thrown in. So it flows really nicely. You could also say that the second phase might not be a nice flow because there is so much forced downtime with the boss going untargetable what feels every 5 seconds almost. But I'd still take something like this over having a full minute or 2 of downtime just to watch the same cutscene every single time. And having the boss become untargetable so often also adds a little bit of extra thought into what you want to be doing with your rotation and your burst windows, so it's not necessarily all that bad. It just makes things a little bit more interesting, I guess you could say. So overall, this one is probably my favorite of the 3. I know Sapphire Weapon is also in the game, but that one isn't a normal fight, so I'm not putting that one on the list. Although I did really enjoy piloting my mech. I might actually go back to replay that quest at some point, because you can replay it, if I'm not mistaken, through New Game Plus at the moment. So it's definitely something that I'll probably do at some point. So the next few days, as more of my friends are trying to clear this one, I'd probably be down to join them, because it is a fun fight, might be a bit overwhelming at first, but once you get 1 or 2 clears, you'll see that it really isn't as bad once you get into the flow of things. And I hope that looking towards the future, they experiment more with things like having split parties or whatever else that they would be able to come up with. So that's gonna do it for me. Let me know in the comments how you've been enjoying the diamond weapon, what are your favorite parts on the fight, what do you dislike about the fight, etc. So on that note, I want to thank you for watching, I want to thank my Patreons for their support, and I'll see you in the next one.